Another thing, we always talk about statistics and events and facts. That it's really hard to get like the actual data on it and figure out what the hell happened if there's any sort of political bias that can work its way in. Are these Australian wildfires? Because I have heard these two different reports, these conflicting ideas. One side of the argument wants to say, "Hey, this is about climate change. This is about climate change. That's why we have wildfires like we've never had before." And they've probably got a point. The other side is like, do you know how many people were arrested for setting fires in Australia this week?
Yeah,
And then the other
apparently they
side
caught
is
a bunch of people.
the other side, the blue team is saying that is fake news. That is right wing climate deniers making up that people were arrested. There were very few arrests. And I'm sitting there like, wait, why are we in an age where I literally can't determine
Yes.
whether these were set by, why can't we just say, yeah, some people set some wildfires, and because the area is so dry this year due to climate change, the fires are very difficult to control. Why can't it be both? Why can't it be both? I feel like both sides are lying to me about something that should be really easy to come together on, and that's putting out some wildfires.
Let me ask you guys a question.
Yeah.
So this is a big topic for me. I was on the board of the Weather Channel for like 6, 7 years, and that
Cool.
was a bunch of years ago as well. And boy, almost a decade ago, we had a bunch of climatologists, meteorologists from all over the world, and some generals, including the general who ran the base in the Philippines, come in and talk to the Weather Channel, talk to us executives like a think tank. And we brought him in because every time we put up something about climate change, it was called global warming back then, it would tank. The ratings would tank. People would get upset. We'd get letters. Our sponsors would be upset. And so our great CEO at the time brought these guys in, especially the generals, because they were nonpartisan, right? He's like, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. I can just tell you we're moving our base because it's sinking into the ocean because the ocean's rising and it's getting warmer, and it's hard to deny it. And he literally went, these were guys from all over the world, and some of them believed that, there were different causes, and not all of them believed like it can complete, the doomsday, the world's going to end in a certain period of time. But it was about, I don't remember how many years ago, but like literally everything the guy said was going to happen. They talked about incredible fires. They talked about earthquakes. They talked about incredibly cold winters and much more severe storms. And they said, stop calling it global warming, because it's not really about, hey, it's freezing out in Chicago today.
Sounds so
Where's the
nice.
global warming?
Yeah.
Right. So I got to wonder, especially with, millennials, like there's no, in Gen Z, there's no bigger fucking topic or, in their lives that's going to affect their lives probably going forward, or their kids' lives, or their quality of life, being able to go outside. And yet it's still this, like, no one wants to, it didn't even make the list for the Democratic debates. It wasn't the top 5 issue that people wanted to talk about. And there's still tons of people who don't believe in it. And it just seems like it breaks down on party lines on some level also. And I just don't understand how this is a partisan issue. Like, what do you guys, like, why do you see that?
I think that it definitely is a partisan issue. Part of it's probably there are a lot of corporations that are responsible for climate change, and to admit that it exists is almost to admit to a degree of culpability there.
Yeah.
And those corporations are very big, and I think that they have a lot of reach and a lot of influence with media and large media companies, and they're able to, you mentioned sponsors. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those sponsors are people like BP. It's probably in their best interest not to admit to dooming the planet potentially. And also it's a real downer, right? It's not something that you can just wave a magic wand at, or actually it is something that you really actually need a literal magic wand, it would seem, to fix. Like unemployment, it's like, all right, well, we need to adjust inflation rates. We need to do something about the currency. Maybe we can invest in the private sector, and I think we can turn this unemployment thing around. Maybe the housing market, maybe we can do something there. But this, it's like, oh, the entire planet is getting a little bit too warm, and we are 250 million out of almost 8 billion. How much influence do we even have? It's and so
There's two kinds of partisan issues in my head, right? There's one which is like, let's say healthcare,
right? The Democrats generally think that the government might do a better job managing the healthcare. They take out the profit motivation, et cetera. And the Republicans feel like, a capitalism-based solution would be good in healthcare. I think they both have good intentions, but they both have different ideas, and that you can respect. Then there are some other things. Climate change is a fantastic example where it's more about rooting for the home team, right? The red team has decided that climate change is fake, that it's something to do with ice age cycles or whatever, and there's nothing we can do with it. It's not caused by humans if it's even happening at all. And the blue team has decided that it is completely caused by humans. And in this age where you can pick your own news and choose your own reality and find sources to back it up, they just root for their own team. And it's a weird thing, like if you tell me what your thoughts are on pro-life versus pro-choice or pro-gun versus whatever they call the other side, then anti-gun, I guess.
Foolishness.
I can reasonably predict your thoughts on climate change. And you'd think that abortion and gun rights would be unrelated to climate change, but they're not, because
school prayer.
People are on their teams.
The correlation between school prayer and belief in science.
Yes.
Directly.
Yeah.
These partisan issues.
More prayer in schools might help.
I doubt it.
I doubt it. It won't hurt.
It won't hurt. Yeah, it couldn't possibly hurt.
He mentioned the climatologist predicting, the wildfires, the larger hurricanes and stuff like. My preacher was doing that when I was 10 years old. He was like, "It's coming. It's coming. The Lord is going to." You just watch. You're going to see increased earthquakes. You're going to see fires. And he starts reading from Scripture, and it's like, I think as long. People who are on the right side of that, and I don't mean the correct side, I mean the right wing side of that argument, to deny it is a comforting thing. It's to say, no, there's no boogeyman in the closet, and the left's like, I don't know, I can see his feet. You're like, no, that's that. Of course you do. Those are your shoes. They're moving. Yeah, the wind rustles them. And it's much more comforting to be on the right side of it, because if you're on the realistic side of believing climate change, it's too late, if we're being honest.
Do you think it doesn't matter your age? I thought this was the one issue where you could live, look where the big devastation's been lately, massive hurricanes and flooding in Houston, New Orleans, Florida, all the southern states. It's hard to deny that this stuff's happening to you as an individual. So when it happens and your whole world gets burnt out by massive wildfires that haven't happened in whatever amount of years, and then you listen and all the science and you're younger generation and you're on the internet, you don't change your mind, or you don't have an open mind.
The younger generation who's on the internet is already on board. The problem is
I don't know. Where are you? What are you doing? Why is Greta the only person out there making a big change? If you guys are going to vote,
I think people don't change their minds because their tribalism is too strong, right? Them and their like-minded friends enjoy their world views and their beliefs, and it's a cohesive bond amongst them, and they don't really care about the fires or the floods or whatever more than they do their social structure, their desire to be liked and fit in.
And there's also alternate viewpoints of this thing that are really easy to buy into if you are a right wing guy. One of the things I see, I read a lot, and again, I bet it's probably true, but I don't know. That is someone explaining that the reason these wildfires are so extreme right now in Australia is because the Liberal Prime Minister prevented them from doing their underbrush burning, because it was going to cause some sort of minor issue. And they're like, they don't allow us to burn the underbrush. So of course, when a fire does kick off, it's completely out of control. That sounds accurate. I know that's a thing here, where they disallowed the burning of the undergrowth, the pine needles and stuff that pile up every season. And that's something the Native Americans did. I've read, every year they'd go in and burn all that out. And it's something that's been disallowed to the point where you've got this huge amount of growth down there and fuel to fuel these gigantic fires.
Well, they won't. If that's what caused it, they will not make that mistake next year. They're going to take care of that. There's a little side thing.
Well, Taylor, you might not have heard, but they're burning it now.
Yeah, really, guys, we're kind of just knocking out the next 10 years of this. They're really taking care of it.
Those are common sense excuses. Like every year has been, for the last 10 years, has been the hottest year on the planet in history. Every year, every year has the most melting ever of the polar ice caps. Every year, every single year, just keep going back, has the biggest rise in water temperature, has the biggest amount of water created. Every year has the biggest fires in history. Now going back every year, like this year, last year it was all here in California, right? Now it's all in Australia. Okay, we should sweep the forest better and burn the pine needles, and maybe there were some guys setting fires. Like, come on, like there's such giant amounts of evidence and science that we just got to put ourselves, into figuring out the issue. And the scariest thing that I remember 10 years ago with these generals, and it's the same now, is that they ranked all the countries all around the world and the public opinion on whether climate was a major issue. And in places like China, who was the biggest polluter, they were actually doing the most as far as scrubbing and coal and thinking about it, and it was a 90% issue for their population. And in Europe, it was an 80% issue. And in the United States, we were doing the least, and it was like a 40% issue.
It makes sense that Chinese, especially urban Chinese, would care about that because they're walking around in smog 24/7. Like that would be terrible.
They had a really visible and lifestyle impact of their climate change. Ours is more disaster oriented, and it's easier to deny.
And it's more happening somewhere else. Like, that's happening in China. That's happening in India.
Yeah, it's less tangible, It's and
those countries got to stop pumping so much plastic into the ocean. Have you seen those clips? That shit is ridiculous. It's absurd how much plastic. It's just whole rivers of plastic just pouring in from like China, India, Bangladesh. Like it looks like it honestly, it looks like when you see an avalanche clip, but instead of snow and ice, it is old Coke bottles and like PC parts and stuff. Just like
America used to do that. I was a surfer in New Jersey when I was a kid. This is like 32 years ago, something like that. And my wetsuit would come back like covered with like dirt and trash and like oil bits. There'd be things floating. Wildwood beaches would get shut down because like the barges where we dumped our trash offshore would wash in, and Wildwood would have to close down all the time. I read in a surfing magazine, I used to be all into those, that the disposable tampon applicator was the New Jersey seashell. And that's so we've cleaned it up a bunch since then, but that's where we were a long time ago.
That's good. Yeah, and it looks like you were right, Woody, with I think you said it, the nearly 200 people arrested for like starting fires. It looks like only 24 of them were arrested for intentionally like starting fires. Most people, it was like not abiding by regulation or like throwing a cigarette out and starting something.
Still counts though, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not. Well, yeah, I mean, the fire doesn't care how it was started, I suppose. But
there must be.
There's not a huge group of people out there being like, hee, we're gonna make people believe this is happening.
I mean, they caught 24, and you would imagine it's very difficult. I could go out back and start a fire right now. Nobody'd know. I mean, they'd suspect me for obvious reasons, but
you just told us right away.
Shit, not again. I could go across town and start some fires and nobody'd know,
You keep ruining your own plan.
If an Atlanta fire happens, this is dropping.
Please, God, not again.
Fingers crossed, please. Not again. I'm not going back. I already did my time.
Yeah, I just don't know, man. I honestly believe that it's too late to affect any real change and to reverse things quickly. I think we're going to see some pretty serious issues over the next, maybe we won't see them, but human beings are going to see some serious changes over the next 50 years or so. And I don't think the thing that I hear about the most that does sound kind of irreversible is, the changing of the ocean currents and how that can lead to the pH of the ocean changing so dramatically that like huge amounts of the sea life die off, and the chain reaction that causes because of everything that sea life is doing for the global ecosystem and our the air quality. Something like that happens. We're not gonna.
You're assuming all these changes are for the negative, right? What if we get rid of sharks and get way cooler flounder?
That's a net positive. I don't like sharks.
It's more likely the ocean turns into acid and the air is unbreathable. But I'm with you. I'm with you.
Well, that sounds cool.
There's so much destruction over the next decades that it's almost like your body getting a fever trying to kill off the virus, you know? And eventually the earth right now has a fever. It's
I've seen
these
the
little bastards, we need to get rid of them. And then eventually it'll cull us down to a reasonable number. And then we can start fucking it up all over again.
That's the premise of like half a dozen movies.
The Matrix I think is one of them.
Day After Tomorrow.
I think in the Matrix they say that people think they're animals, but they're not. They're actually a virus, right? Because if you think about a virus, it just keeps reproducing and growing and expanding until eventually it kills its own habitat. That's what viruses do. I'm like, oh, that does kind of sound like people.